thank you so much for joining me in this I don't know, beautiful conversation we're gonna have. I'm really excited to learn more about your practice and your altar and your experiences.
Thank you, Diana. It's an honor to be here with you today.
I guess I wanted to first start out with saying like you and I are friends. We know each other, and actually from way back in the day in our past lives in Miami. I'm from Miami, and Zuli lives in Miami, and we met through like old friends, before we went into these traditions. And then somehow you and I reconnected at the farmers market where my mom sells guayusa. And yeah, and we reconnected since then. And yeah, we've been in contact, and I'll share a little bit more, but I just wanted to share that little piece about our friendship. So to introduce Zuli, Zulaika Alvarez, also known as Zuli or Zulibrí, is an artist, massage therapist, ancestral song carrier, and heart-based guide who works with cacao as a sacred plant ally to support deep healing and the resolution of traumatic experiences, self-love, and reconnection to the natural elements. Through authentic cacao ceremonies, massage therapy, energy work, and rites of passage, she creates safe spaces for transformation rooted in reverence, prayer, and ancestral wisdom. Her work centers the heart, the womb, cycle syncing, body work, and the remembering of our true essence. And so I wanted to you sent me more information about your bio. But I want to split it up into 3 sections, and I just wanted to like kind of insert a few things here. So just to give a picture of who Zuli is, once we reconnected back in Miami, I wanted a massage therapy, and I remember your massage therapies are so good. I remember like the way that you do it is just incredible, and it's like really opening here. And so you came over, and you provided a massage therapy, some Reiki healing, and you also sang this beautiful song at the end of the therapy session, and it was really beautiful and, I don't know, relaxing. I just felt renewed completely after that, and, yeah, that really stood out to me. And, and then also wanna add that in that moment, going to my personal story with the Mayan traditions, um, we talked briefly because I saw that you were sharing about this stuff, and I was simultaneously also studying the Mayan traditions. So, you told me about your teacher who was in Miami, and then from there, it just my studies went into a whole other level because you connected me with Tata, which we'll discuss in a little bit. But yeah, I just wanted to add that in there as part of your journey. Can you just share a little bit about how long you've been doing massage therapy, and how you're integrating the resolution of traumatic experiences into that work?
Just to remind you and rewind as far as the friendship, when you were living in California and you started becoming this incredible graphic designer, and I was so inspired by your work and just the meticulousness in the way that you do things. And what you were putting out was really on another level. I still think it is compared to a lot of people that I know. And you were the one using numerology. I don't know if you remember because you worked with so many people. You helped me come up with my business name, Sacred Wellness by Zuli. And it was
Mm.
you who helped me come up with that. And it was you who made my logo years ago. And then you helped me with my Ish Cacao logo. So that was the beginning of the relationship. And then naturally, being in Miami, we connected again. So thanks for that. And so, as far as being a massage therapist, I've been a massage therapist for over 10 years since 2013. I graduated from Educating Hands School of Massage. At the time, it was one of the top 10 schools in the country for massage therapy. It is no longer open, but massage therapy is my foundation of healing. And it's my career. I always say it's my bread and butter. And it's the foundation of where I started to actually heal myself because when I became a therapist and I started trying to work and working on people, I knew the technicality of it. I understood how to do the massage, but I knew I always wanted to help people, but I kept realizing that I needed a lot of help as well, because the world of massage therapy is healing arts. And so in my way of wanting to help others, I started to have to help myself. The reason Thank you for asking about the trauma, because that's actually the trauma work is like the future of sacred wellness, and it's like the foundation, because I grew up with a lot of trauma, and it's actually what brought me into plant medicine. But when I started with the plant medicine about 10 years ago too, like 2014 is when I started, the word trauma was not used as it's being used now. And we didn't even have the kind of social media we had at the time, where so much things are being brought to light. So it was the trauma that brought me to all of this, to understand why I had certain behaviors and patterns. Even if my heart always led me to do these nice things for people and want to be of service, I still kept finding blockages in myself, which led me into the plant medicine.
Perfect. Yeah, and I think this is a perfect segue for the next part, that you shared in your bio. So you said over the last 10 years, you've worked with different plant medicines seeking alternative healing, and you've done dietas in the jungles of Pucallpa, Peru,
Mhm,
with ayahuasca. You've gone into work with sacred Huachuma, also known as San Pedro or Ahuacola or Ahuacoya from the Andes. And you're in an alliance with Huixarica, is that how you say it?
Wirarica.
Huirarica Nation,
Mhm,
um, also known as Huichol or Maracames from
mhm,
Mexico, honoring the sacrament of Peyote and sponsoring their work. And you're still a part of the Native American church participating in inipis or sweat lodge as a way of life.
mhm.
And so here, I remember you shared a little bit about your journey in Ecuador. That's where the work with the San Pedro came, right?
Exacto.
Yes. And so I would love to hear a little bit about that and, before we move on to cacao. And I guess to get like an essence of that work, like what were the key takeaways from the work with Wachuma?
The work with the Wachuma, that's a very important question, because I decided to do my vision quest in Ecuador with the medicine of Wachuma. So with the vision questing and the medicine of the Wachuma, I started to get to know myself better. I mean, I went all in. I started learning even more songs and fully committed to the path. But the deeper I got into it, it's almost like I wasn't feeling very well. I wasn't getting what I thought I was supposed to get from it, which was like healing. I started to notice that I would feel okay, like maybe I had an amazing ceremony, but then I started seeing that I started feeling really bad the days afterwards. And it was very inconsistent. Sometimes I would have amazing ceremonies and feel okay afterwards. And then sometimes, I mean, I would, I started to actually, my health started to degrade, basically, going to Ecuador, working with the medicine of Wachuma.
So you were feeling sick?
I started getting sick, right?
Okay.
I started feeling worse than when I started. And with this whole trauma, part of the reason I got into the plant medicine is because one of the symptoms I always experienced was depression. So I started getting like the depression started getting worse, and I started to have issues with my body, like not being able to move. But I finally, because of that whole experience, which I came to find out that that medicine is not my medicine, like, it's not ideal, because I have struggled with mental health, and I have proven this for myself. It's not the best medicine for people who struggle with mental health.
Mm,
And because of my time in Ecuador, I realized that I have a chronic illness called PMDD,
mm.
premenstrual dysphoric disorder. And just to give you a gist of that, I had to take a long break from the San Pedro, and because I realized, like, okay, just calm down with the San Pedro And I started to go deeper into the cacao because that was my vision from my hamblecha. And that's when the real healing started to begin. But it's like I had to go through that and I had to fast because women with PMDD and women in general, fasting, you have to be very careful. This is why I also teach cycle syncing and the womb wisdom because it all women we have to fast depending on our cycle in different times, right?
Mm.
So the fasting basically threw me out. It gave me a lot of rage. It like I basically had to like just empty everything out, reach rock bottom to then start working with cacao, which the cacao started bringing me back into my body.
Okay, yeah, I definitely have questions here too. So you mentioned, okay, the PMDD, that was around that time in Ecuador, and then you mentioned the amblecha, which is
Hamblecha.
a northern Native American tradition, correct? Is
Mhm.
that in any way related to the Lakota?
Absolutely,
Okay.
absolutely.
Yeah, so
So
share a little bit about
originally,
that.
yeah, so I've always been connected to Native American ways. I've always been attracted to it. I always had this feeling that I needed to go on a mountain and forget the world. I always fantasized about this.
Mm.
I never understood that I had PMDD. I've had PMDD since I started bleeding, since I was 13. It just kind of progresses and gets worse. So when I was going, I laugh. I say I was going hard. I was doing like ceremonies all the time. I was helping them with their altars. Uh, I was really pushing my body. So when I went to the mountain, little did I know, my whole life I needed like that silence. I needed to get away because that's what happens with PMDD. You get irritable and you want to be left alone. So it was a amazing gift, my vision quest, the Hamblecha. But traditionally, it's a Native American um, ritual that when the young boys become men, the elder, the chief of the lineage, the young boy has to prepare the prayer ties, depending on their lineage. It comes from the Lakota people, the Sioux Lakota, and you make a prayer tie, one for every year. And then the chief takes the kid up to the mountain. They leave him there for 4 days. The original Vision Quest is 4 days. The Hamblecha is 4 days. And that's when they become from a boy to a man with the fasting. And Hamblecha means when you cry out for a vision.
Oh.
When I went to Ecuador, like I thought, I mean, it is a vision quest, but I hadn't had as much affiliation with the Lakota at the time. And I thought that it was like a place where I was going to be around more native people, but I happened to be around native people from Ecuador, right? It's a different culture and they also work with different medicine. And that's when I opened the portal of really getting into the politics of medicine, just like there's politics in all of it. And, as far as with what I learned, which was very difficult for me to learn in my first year, was that most the Lakota people are not happy and not okay with
Mhm.
certain things happening in certain cultures calling and doing vision quest.
Right.
But the same way, this vision quest is was also a vision from Aurelio. It's called the Fuego Sagrado de Isachitatlan, and it was this vision from this Mexican man who went on the mountain with the Lakotas, and then he said he got the vision that the vision quest should be 4, 7, 9, and 13 days.
Mm.
Over the years, I've also learned though that in Peru and Ecuador, there are medicine men and cultures where they do their own vision quests. It's just different. It will be like in a cave, and they don't try to make it like that it's Lakota, except that the Fuego Sagrado de Isachitatlan is very similar. The altar is very similar, except it's like they make everything bigger because the peyote is more the medicine for the Lakota, and the San Pedro is the medicine from the south. At the same time, I feel like this is all a part of the Eagle Condor prophecy, um, because there's a lot of people that it's done well, and I did 3 years, so I did 4, 7, and 9. And once I did the 9, I was like, "Mm." I don't need Vision Quest. I also thought that I was gonna like keep going super hard. I thought it was gonna be my path forever. But I feel like the Vision Quest did did the work in the sense where it stopped me in my tracks to start to deal with the things that I was really escaping and running away from, which was like learning how to live. And that's what it's all about. It's el camino del buen vivir, and
The path of well living.
yes,
Mhm.
that's what they say. So I wouldn't call the Vision Quest in Ecuador a hamblecha. I wouldn't call it. It's not from the Lakota people, but fast forward so many years later, I started in 2017. I just have come to the understanding that some people do things their way. The same with cacao, and that's the first thing they tell you when you go to that altar. This is how we do it here, and
Right,
you either
different
like it.
formalities, but same roots.
Yes, exactly. And it's different medicine, and it's also people from the South, so it's different. They don't necessarily try to pretend like it's something else.
I think it's so beautiful that you've had that experience of, doing that type of, work with the inipis and the fasting, but you've had an experience with both the Northern and the South American native culture, so you've kinda been in the crossover of it. So that must be interesting. I mean, you probably gained a lot of knowledge about how different cosmovisions intersect together.
Yes, and I've learned I also know more where I wanna focus on because I do honor the Lakota and I do honor the Native American church. So, it kind of showed me the other side of things, and it helped me to choose where I wanna keep walking, because generally where you decide to vision quest, it's kind of becomes your family forever. So there was a point I thought that they were gonna be my family forever, but I got sick and there was no really support. Since then, there's been so many people talking about plant medicine integration. So I
Mm.
feel like I'm definitely one of those catalysts of like, and there's also medicine man and medicine woman that are doing plant medicine integration now because of the fact that a lot of people go, we get opened up, but then we don't know what to do after. And that's kind of what happened. And then combined with the PMDD, I went really low and I went through a psychosis.
Mhm.
I went through a psychosis. But
Wow.
now I've come out on the other side and basically the sun dance is from the Lakota people, and the sun dance is in here in America, in South Dakota, and I feel like that's like the origin of everything, and I feel like I haven't made it there yet, but I feel like if people want to even have some type of connection to understand, I think people we should go there and support what they're
Yeah,
doing there.
absolutely. I've been very fortunate to be able to attend and support my husband there who's a dancer at Sundance.
Wow.
He's going this year. Yeah, I won't be able to join him and support him this year, but, yeah, I'm excited for him. It's his 3rd year,
Wow,
and,
that's beautiful.
it's a whole yeah, it's a whole other world.
Mhm.
I mean, like, the full duality of nature is in Sundance. It's beautiful, it's ecstatic, and at the same time, it could get really dark. It's quite
Absolutely.
an experience, yeah.
Mhm.
Um, yeah, so that's awesome. I love that you shared a little bit about that in your bio because I think this is an important, aspect of your journey, and it kinda demonstrates how you have like a holistic understanding of how all of these traditions kind of work together and also like knowing how you've found your path through it. And I love that you talked about the eagle condor prophecy, which is the union of the eagle and from the north, condor of the south, but it's also the left and right hemispheres of the brain. It's the feminine and the masculine. And so when they're flying together, that's when, it says that it brings an age of renewal and spiritual awakening, right? That's kind of the essence of that.
Absolutely.
And
Feel like I experienced that. I lived it. We're living it, but I feel like
we're living it right now, this moment.
yeah, we are.
Yeah, like bringing this wisdom, ancestral wisdom in through technology, and it's a
Mhm.
whole ordeal with technology getting to even, like, be able to open this dialogue. That's the eagle.
Exactly, exactly.
But then what's really interesting too is that then there's the quetzal, which is right in the center between the eagle and the condor. And then now we're going into your work with cacao. So you said in 2018, in your second year, you received a vision to work with cacao. And at the time, you didn't realize how difficult yet life-changing this process would be since cacao started to become more popular and its essence forgotten. So I feel like there's a lot of juice here. And so after your vision quest and your prayers to receive this vision, how did the spirit of cacao come through?
Well, it was on the mountain. It was on the mountain, and I the power of prayer is real. It doesn't matter where you are. You can be in your room, but the power of prayer and fasting is real. In all traditions, you can do that and really reach a certain level. And with that clarity, I was praying with my heart to God to please help me with my future because I know that I'm meant to help others. I also know that I've been a strong person in the medicine path. I've inspired many people because of the singing. I have a powerful voice and being in those environments. So the vision came. It's just, it comes. You don't see it. You like feel it. You see it. And it's just said, you got to work with cacao. And then after that is when the mind starts coming in. First is the spirit, and then
Mm.
I'm like, "That's my vision." I'm like, "Okay." And then I start trying to ask, "Okay, but what am I supposed to do? You know, what am I supposed to do with this?"
How am I gonna make
And
this happen?
yeah, like, "What do you mean?" And then it said, like, for sure the answer was, "One day at a time, you're gonna see. Just start. Just start." And basically, I just started like, when I got back to Miami, I just started, like, drinking cacao more, asking around, "What is a cacao ceremony?" At the same time, people at that time, cacao started getting popular, so I really feel like I connected with the spirit of Ish Cacao right in the moment where Ish Cacao wants to be known.
Mhm.
But at the same time, so many people, because the world needs the heart medicine and the strength that the cacao brings. So at the same time, it was becoming popularized, but I feel like I don't know, did I answer your question? Because I don't want to keep going. I don't want to
Yeah,
go
yeah.
over.
So just to reflect back, what I'm understanding is that so you received this vision and it was kind of perfectly timed in this season of, people in these traditions starting to use cacao, whether they're doing it out of integrity or with integrity, but it just now we're experiencing, this the cacao ceremonies and everything about cacao. And so you thought it was interesting how it just came in that moment when this kind of like, I guess, cacao movement just started, something like that, right?
Absolutely. I don't think it's a coincidence. I mean, I have goosebumps as I speak about it. I feel like the cacao is also choosing me. I never thought that I would be saying this, but it happened, and that's why I'm grateful to be talking about it because the cacao wants to be known as the Maya people know it and be used in reverence also, not just how it's being used. And it's not a coincidence. The spirit of cacao is a spirit of cacao. It is an energy too. It's not just drinking it. It's a spirit that's been alive for a long time.
Mhm. Mhm. Yeah, and I love that we're talking about this because right now we're currently in the Trecena of Ish, which represents the spirit of the earth. And so I feel like cacao, among many other plant medicines, but cacao is definitely like a manifestation of the spirit of Mother Earth. And I feel like she communicates to us through these sacraments. Oh yeah, and so you said you experienced some difficulties, and when you say difficulties, it's basically just like the pain of seeing it used without reverence.
Oh, what I wanted to say exactly is that I had this innate knowing that there was something so much deeper about cacao, that the things that I started to see people doing, the experiences I had had, because I had a friend who was a mentor, who's a psychologist, very intelligent woman. she's the person I first had cacao with. It was a beautiful women's circle. Um, but I just said, there has to be more to a cacao ceremony. What these people are doing, it can't be a cacao ceremony, because I was really in it, like doing ceremonies very authentic, whether it's with ayahuasca, peyote, you know, San Pedro. So I already knew, like, this has to be a lot more earthy. Like, it's not just a basically like, or like a kirtan in cacao. That's
Right, like
you,
rooted in tradition, in ancient tradition.
yeah. I was hungry to understand the tradition of cacao.
Mm, okay, beautiful.
Mhm.
And then you said you received, uh, cacao teachings and an altar from Mexico from a local and beloved medicine woman from Colombia, Aixa? Aixa,
Aixa Amankay.
Aixa Amankay. In that journey of learning about traditional cacao ceremonies, and you then met Tata Carlos, who is an Ahki, Mayan quiche, and an authentic guardian of sacred cacao, Cachiquel, which I know Cachiquel is a lineage, a Mayan lineage.
Mhm.
So first, let's hear a little bit about the medicine woman from Colombia and what it looked like to receive a cacao altar. What does that look like?
Aixa Mankay is a beloved medicine woman that started drinking yahe because she had health problems in Colombia at, like, I think the age of 13. So the medicine of yahe saved her life, and she met a medicine man who's very well known. He has a Sundance in Colombia, I believe. His name is Mao Tatanka, and he brought her under his wing, and that's how she started working with the medicine. They have a child together. Fast forward, who knows, 20 years after. I've been praying with her for years, here in Miami. And so she has seen me. She has seen me coming in and out to the prayers. She's also known about my path, and she always related because she knew a lot of, she likes the medicine of Huachuma as well, and she she has also walked, like, many paths. That's why she received the altar from Mexico. And I told her, even though I was afraid, but I finally told her one day after ceremony, I'm like, I also heard that she serves cacao, that she does cacao ceremony, but she hadn't been doing cacao ceremony because, as we know, it's not something you do often. And I finally asked her, and I said, "Can you teach me?" And I was like, when I say that, it was like my biggest focus, my biggest prayer, like my biggest intention, like the arrow was pointing to the cacao. I also had to, like, stop doing a lot of the things I was doing before, which was difficult because I'm used to, like, praying with a certain way with certain people. And she's like, "Oh, you want to learn cacao?" And of course, like a true traditional, like, shamanic path, she didn't really answer me. She just looked at me, and it felt like it was like a whole year after. For that day, first she told me, "Oh, well, if you really want that, you have to give me tobacco." And that day I was like, I left the land and I came back, and she was like, because these people hear things all the time, and unless you really do the act that the native people do to show reverence, um that's what showed her, like, I was serious about it, and I wasn't gonna wait, because these people are not easy to catch. She's a busy woman.
Mhm.
She's a true medicine woman, a true shaman, you can call it. But and she's a doula, and she goes around helping people all over, like, the US, and she does all kinds of workshops aside from holding actual ceremony, you know. And sweat lodges. She's also a moon dancer, which is, I'm sure, why all her time in Mexico is why how she met Abuelita Margarita, which is the one who passed her the cacao altar. And as far as to answer your question about what is an altar, around that time, when I received the altar from Aixa, that altar was, she taught me how to host an authentic cacao ceremony, right? How to host it, right? Another thing about receiving an altar in that way is that you need witnesses. You can't, so there was like 30 witnesses there. There was a lot of people who saw me. I also received it with a beloved sister. Her name is Patti. We both received it together. Um, And then around that time, I was also working a lot with the Maracames, the Wiraricas. They're the Huichol people, the Maracames from Mexico.
Mhm.
I was sponsoring them here, and there was a sister that had spent a lot of time in Guatemala that she was very helpful. Her name is Alira, and I was kind of telling everybody, like not everybody, but I was like, oh, I'm working with cacao. I have a cacao altar. I'm working with cacao, just kind of letting it be known because, and that's, I was also preparing myself mentally because I was, just because you receive it, the work starts when you start doing the work, right? So it's already been 5 years that I've been doing this. I feel like, whoa, now we're getting there.
Mhm.
And what I kept hearing, like, Alira was one of the first women who actually goes, cacao altar? She's like, well, it's not like that, it's not a cacao altar. And that's when I started to realize that there was something that else that I didn't know
Mhm.
about cacao. And I kept praying. I didn't do too many cacao ceremonies, but I did the things that she taught me. And yeah, that answers that question.
And so, just to clarify, so of course you had to ask, with reverence, offer tobacco, and then essentially she teaches you how to facilitate a ceremony, right?
Mhm.
And just to like give us a visual of what that would look like and like a timeline. Like what is she showing you how to like prepare the actual altar? Um is it
No,
yeah.
well, it was more like spirit. It all worked spirit aligned, where a sister wanted to sponsor a cacao ceremony because she was going through something. Because a lot of these ceremonies, that's how they work. They're sponsored. It's not like, oh, I'm just going to do a cacao ceremony. If anything, a cacao ceremony is done more when people ask for it because they need it for healing. So the momentum started, and I know the sister, another sister from our community, Fawn, you know, she always trusts her, and also the momentum, there was a lot of things happening with cacao. So that's why she called it, because it's like, hey, our teacher knows about this. Let's experience it. But the way that you learn, like these traditions, like, first of all, I didn't write anything down. That experience was just like the first cacao ceremony with her. I sat in it, I watched, I observed. You pray that you remember as much as you can, and then you receive the altar. But that's when you really start to dive deep, right? And I was able to, I realized, like, wow, I still needed so much to learn before I can share this medicine, because she knows all this stuff, the creation story. She's practiced it. She does it like with her eyes closed. I think Aixa is like, she's a walking encyclopedia. She's very, very intelligent woman. So that's how it is. And even fast forward to the Maya tradition, I mean, a lot of these things are kept through the word of mouth. Like, when I'm sure you've read, you're very well read.
Yeah,
I
it's like
grew up reading
orally passed traditions.
orally passed. Yes, and I remember growing up reading all these Buddhist stories, and I always innately wanted a teacher. I said, "How cool would it be to like go to this old person and like this sage that you just talk to, and they share knowledge with you?" I always imagined that that's how a real teacher is, right? Not the way that we're seeing it now with the workshops and stuff. And
Right.
so that's how it was. But it's also, that's when also a deeper healing journey for me began, because if you want to be a leader, you really have to look at yourself so you can help others, right?
Oh, yes.
Exactly. And that's when I started to mature and take myself to the next level and start to develop. At that time, I wasn't even good at talking. That's why it's no coincidence 5 years later we're doing the interview, because it's
Mhm.
time. It's just
Mhm.
the right time. Like when they say, when a how says it's time, when God says it's time, it's time.
Yes. Yes, beautiful. Yeah, and I love that you brought up the healing because, how I perceive it, it's that it's not just a cacao, but it's like a communal prayer with intention, and there's, like, some really powerful metaphysical things that happen there, between the cacao and the intention of the people that are there, correct?
Absolutely.
Mhm.
Absolutely.
Okay. And then from there, How did you come across Tata Carlos, who by the way is the Mayan Aki elder that Zuli introduced me to in Miami, where I had my first fire ceremony. So I'm curious. We never talked about that. I'm curious about how you came across his work.
Well, I think like uh as God wanted it, when the student is ready, the teacher finds you. And he's a true he is a not only is he an akik, but he's a guardian of cacao. He's a true cacao guardian, which is actually a lineage. It's not just a label that you just get. Like there's a lot of work that has to be done to get that title with the Maya people. And so I was posting things of like the work I was doing of ceremonies. And I saw he had been watching me for a while, but I didn't notice him at all. And then it just happened. Like then I'm like, wait, this guy is because when I see his Instagram, it says, Ak Mayan. At that time, that's like Chinese to me. Like I don't know what that is. It's a whole nother world, the Mayan world. So I'm like, what does that mean? Like people don't understand, and it's a different wording. So I'm like, we don't know that an ich is a priest. It's a Mayan priest.
Mhm.
So I didn't really understand that. But then every now and then it was just finally, I don't know exactly, but I started talking to him online, and he's like, "That's not cacao ceremony." And he was tough. You know him.
Mm.
He's and the same way elders are, the same way he learned, which is not an easy way of learning, because if you want to learn the right way, it's like it's tough learning, especially with all my background. Like for example, one of the first things that he told me about serving cacao, because I had a picture or a video of me in front of the cacao singing with my drum. So one of the first teachings I got from him was el cacao no es camino rojo. The cacao is not the red road, right? And of course it's confusing. It's confusing for me.
Just to
But
orient the audience, the Red Road is the Lakota tradition, the sweat lodge, involving all of that. So he's saying the cacao is not that,
yeah, and the red road is also the moon dance,
and the
which
moon.
is it's also the moon dance, which is very popular, and it's beautiful work for the people who feel called to that life. It's very transformative. Um,
And so when he said it's not the Red Road, what did he mean by that?
so these oral things that they tell you, it's something I have to meditate on, because I didn't understand that. But what he meant is that there's ways to work with cacao that you don't even have to sing. you know, I've done healings with him with cacao, and nobody sings. And it's been profound. When we do the Mayan fire, we're not singing with our drum. It's a different lineage.
Mhm.
It's a whole different world. Um, and he was telling me essentially that I had a lot more to learn. And he was right, because what I can say is that Aixa empowered me as a woman. She is one of the women that I've worked with that has truly seen me. She's the one who gave me the name Zulibrí,
Mhm.
and she gave me that name after years of knowing me. So I hold it with reverence. But Aixa gave me the honor as a woman. She passed me the altar so I can start to do the work. But Tata Carlos is the person who has helped me heal with cacao, and has taught me how to do trabajos and how to do certain work with people and myself, and how to work with the Nahuales for healing my heart and womb. So basically, I have gone so much deeper with cacao through the Mayan cosmovision.
Right. And so he taught you how to integrate the sacred calendar into the intentions of healing, and basically the women's cycle, which is very much connected to the sacred calendar. So yeah, so combining all of those with the cacao healing.
He also he helped me refine my work to a whole other level. where my cacao ceremonies now versus 5 years ago. I mean, that's why if anybody has been to my cacao ceremonies or circles in those times, I mean, I've transformed a lot. The circles are completely different. Um, and he taught me how to take some of the Western things I had added to it and to really make it just rooted in the Mayan cosmovision. So, like, for example, one of the simple things he had taught me when he came to a cacao ceremony, as like I honored him, I've been learning how to do a different style of fire, um, because that lineage that he works with is actually very orthodox, and it's not the same as what people are used to seeing, like the little pretty velitas, because the little velitas have gotten popular, but I would like people to understand that there are different lineages within the Maya. Like there's the Cachiquel, there's the Quiche. And then as all things, as all altars, different teachers, I mean, you're gonna have some discrepancies. There's also different Mayan calendars, you know?
Mhm.
So we're working with the Cholki, and for example, like just simple because there's a lot of symbolism. Like I knew the roses had to do with the cacao, but I would use like the whole entire rose. And he's like, you're not, he's like, don't use the whole rose because
Mm.
of the thorns. And that's just the symbolism because we can't have thorns on the altar because we don't
Mm.
want thorns for people. We want them the softness of the petals of the flower to help
Right.
them open and bloom, and it's symbolism, but it really works. And because when I started to remove the thorns from my altar, I started to remove the thorns from my emotional wounds.
Wow. That's beautiful. Okay. Going back to how all of this connects, well, what I found interesting right now, you said there's the is there a fire always present in the, cacao ceremonies that you do?
Yes and no. Um, I could do it with a fire, but I don't have to because essentially, this whole podcast is about authentic cacao ceremony, and I know we're gonna get there, but essentially, cacao ceremony doesn't exist because it's a toma de cacao. For the Mayans, that's what they're called. That's what it's called, una toma de cacao, which translates to drink of cacao. Of course, it sounds so much nicer and cooler in Spanish.
The verb drinking cacao.
Yeah,
Mhm.
exactly. It's literally drinking cacao. So you don't need a fire um to work deeply with cacao, but yes, there's levels to it, and he is teaching me ways to work with the ocote and the fire because the Mayan work is all about offerings, but it's not, I'm not going to be doing the Mayan fire they do in that style, at least not anytime soon, because you have to be an actual akik for that and a priestess. Um, but it's like little baby steps of learning to work with the ocote. And like when you, when I'm doing these kind of things, it makes me understand where I'm at. Like it's how things start to change internally in me because this is not Western teachings. This is Mayan cosmovision, right? So it's like as I do things, I transform, and as I do them right and like try to do them better, I become a better teacher because I understand more what I'm doing and why I'm doing it.
Right. Ocote is, resin.
Wood. What do you call it?
It's a resin, right? It's like a sweet
Yeah,
wood, and
it's
normally that's
also known
offered
as
to the fires.
yeah, it's known as fat wood. People
Okay.
use it all the time to start fires.
Yeah.
So it's fat wood, but yeah, it is a resin. And
Y
and just so you know, one of the beautiful things as far as that tradition and that very orthodox tradition, the first offering was that was given, which was the ocote, basically, like on bats, like on the day of creation, and that
Mhm.
was one of the first offerings from Ahau. So that's why, and I like it. I like it's very rustic, and it's very rustic versus using the candles, which is also more it's not as green, even though they use green environmentally good
Mhm.
candles. Mhm.
Okay, so that's interesting. So sometimes there's a fire, sometimes there's not. It all depends on kind of like the context of the ceremony.
Yes. Well, the truth is it depends on what's available. I have to learn how to work with what we have. And, if somebody wants to receive the medicine of cacao and wants to do healing work and there's no fire, I mean, of course we can still do it.
Right.
Of course we have our beautiful velitas.
And how important is the actual cacao itself and how it's sourced and if it's preyed upon. And I know we wanted to get into the topic of how there's a trendy use of the word ceremonial cacao, and that's not always accurate in some cases. So I want to hear a little bit about the cacao itself.
Correct. Very important question. Something I have been wanting to discuss. So s- it does matter the cacao that we drink, because if we're drinking cacao for us for healing for a specific reason, we really need to drink cacao that was made for healing and that was prepared by people who are connected to the tradition and who are, I can't say that they're healed themselves, because like who's really fully healed in this day and age? We all have work to do, but people who are taking care of the cacao with reverence, and people who are not being like forced into farming cacao, because that's what's happening. It has to be basically we can't drink cacao that was mm, prepared by an abused woman. We can't make drink cacao that was prepared by a young boy or young woman that's being forced into child labor, which is happening.
Mm.
And ceremonial cacao, s- there's it really is supposed to come. It's not supposed to be um cloned. So there's a lot of cloned cacao now. And those cacao, it tastes good. I mean, it doesn't it- they you feel the spirit of cacao, like you can feel it working in your body. But as far as doing what I call like the trabajos of like profound healing, it has a different energy, because ceremonial cacao, it comes from specific seed. One of them is the criolla seed.
Mhm.
And there's other seeds that it comes from, but I'm not familiar because I'm learning. But it basically has to come from like the lineage of that clean cacao. It also has to come from a cacao tal, where the cacao is surrounded by all the flora and fauna that it belongs with. For example, the type of animals that are around the cacao, the type of like mushrooms and cacao, they
Like
live
a
together.
biodiverse farm, right?
Exactly. It has to with the origins of how cacao is made into the ish cacao, the spirit of cacao. So not only did I learn some of this from Tata Carlos, but I want to mention the name of this um, sacerdote. That's how you say priest in for a man, and his name is Abuelo Efren Hernandez
Okay.
Maldonado, and he has a YouTube where he explains what is ceremonial cacao, and he explains why cacao ceremonies don't exist and why we should stop calling it cacao ceremony.
Mhm.
And I wanted to honor his name because if people want to really go deeper into it, they should really watch it. And it's in Spanish though. So um but he is a person who is a Mayan priest, but he is from Tabasco, Mexico. So it's also understanding too that the Mayan lineage comes from Guatemala, and then there are some Mayans still in Mexico, but overall, there's just more Aztec and Mexica influence. But he is one of those that is in Mexico, and he's fighting for like the truth of cacao and trying to keep it reverent. Um, and we have to make sure that we're not drinking cacao with like these agrochemicals. It's really hard to know. And it's really hard to tell because a lot of people, for example, are having cacao companies. And look, you're a graphic designer. You make this amazing labels for guayusa. People can essentially write anything on their
Mhm.
labels. They just say, hey, I need you to write this and this and this. And that is what's happening.
Fair trade is included in that. We don't even say any of that because there's no actual, like, regulation around that. But yeah, I understand that concept completely. Yeah.
And so there are people that have acquired cacao companies, uh, and they call it ceremonial because people nowadays think that ceremonial cacao is the ceremony that we have. They think that it's called ceremonial cacao because it's a sacred beverage. It's not called. What makes a cacao ceremonial is that it comes from that specific lineage. And a perfect example is, for example, Prophecy Chocolate. They are a cacao company that I support. And if you go into the website, he has different options of cacao, and not all of them say ceremonial. It's very interesting. One would say ceremonial, and maybe they have a different process. Another thing about the ceremonial cacao, I learned it's harvested, at least according to El Abuelo Efren, June, July, and August. Another thing is that they actually do the prayers and they harvest it with prayers. When a person becomes a priest, like if we think in the Western world, you're Catholic,
Mhm.
they have to do a lot of studying. You can't just say, I'm a priest, And so essentially, what the Akiks do for us, if they were to hold a ceremony, is that they're praying for us the same way a priest from any church would pray. But they have been given the authority and and the order of how to do this correctly so that people can actually heal and feel better. That leads us to, what is a cacao ceremony and what it's not.
So I just wanna get clear. So there's monocropping, which is when they clear land and they grow basically cacao, like, on, so we have that kind of cacao, and then the ceremonial cacao, like, it's from the even it starts from the process of the agriculture, right? And so it's basically grown in biodiverse farming. That's a first step, and then the person that's actually cultivating it and then, processing or whatever, that person needs to be basically clear of,
They need to be a Mayan akik.
oh, they have to be an
Efren is
aki.
an
Okay,
akik. So
that's
there
really
needs to be
important.
some
Okay.
akik around the cacao so
Mhm.
that so they can pray over the cacao. It's really true that they pray and harvest it in a certain way. It's like a ritual, and it's just, for them it's probably second nature, but it is a process where they pray and they, like, it's like they invoke it with the ancient spirit of the grandmothers and grandfathers. And like, to explain, like, for example, like, I don't wanna call out any companies, but there are some companies that I've stopped working with, and it's very unfortunate even here in Miami. They write ceremonial cacao, and I promise you these people are they don't barely know anything about ceremony. Like, they're completely new Westerners that have seen it as they're like colonizing it, and it's like almost the same thing that happened before is happening now through other people, that never have they haven't had the reverence or the humility to honor the indigenous people, yet they have the connection and the money to buy the cacao from the farmers who desperately need the money, for a very cheap price. Like, for example, Nicaragua. Like, I'm pretty sure there's no Mayan X in Nicaragua, but Nicaragua has cacao, right? And it's part of their culture, just as in all of Central America. Cacao for all of these people is a sacred beverage that it's just a part of their life, just as maybe somebody would drink wine in America or in Europe, how they
Mhm.
drink wine. It's, you know, so Yeah, so that's the thing, and there's cacao from Africa. We have to see, like, what's happening in Africa, and I don't and like I said, I wanna be careful not to talk about, like not to talk bad about it, but it's just to make sure you have to ask where the cacao is from, and just because it's from Central America, because that's the only place that it can really grow, it doesn't mean it's ceremonial, and the way because I just did a cacao making class the other night, and, the lady asked me a few times, uh, "How do we know it's ceremonial, and how do you know that?" And it's like, "Wow, I can't believe it's not ceremonial. It says it on the label." Well, the only thing I can say is you have to ask around, and, like, then there's people like me who can explain that it's not ceremonial cacao and that they're doing it for business,
Mhm.
and some people, and even me, I'm not explaining 100% the best way that of what makes cacao ceremonial, but there is, like, 3 specific seeds, the criolla, the patate, that it comes, like, from the origin, um, and so it's about trust. Now this is about integrity. This is about, okay, Zuli worked with the Mayan Akik. Okay, well, I'm trusting the Mayan Akik and his knowledge as a cacao guardian to explain. And I've had the opportunity to try different cacaos, and the cacao I'm working with from Peru that is ceremonial is what a difference in the energy, because
That's what I was gonna
he
ask you because I think you could really tell in the results of what one feels, in the results of, like, what people experience after the ceremony, correct?
Mhm. Yes, and I can tell in the results, yeah, that in the way that I work with people, and also in the amount of cacao. Um, some people, they say, "I drink strong cacao." It really depends what you're doing. There's no proper dosage, but you don't essentially wanna have to drink so much cacao to feel it.
Yeah, yeah. The And just going a little bit into the components of cacao, because a lot of people that are, doing these so-called cacao ceremonies, the way that they sell it is like, oh, this is kind of like it's kind of like MDMA, but it does feel that way because it does release dopamine. I think it's serotonin. That's the theobromine in the
Mhm.
cacao, right?
Theobroma and the
Mhm.
anandamine. The anandamine is the bliss molecule,
And anandamine, right? Mm-hmm.
which the yogis, the ananda is like a yogi word, so, like, I think they got it from that, like, it's the
Bliss.
peaceful. Yeah.
And would you say that you've been able to tell a difference with the true ceremonial cacao that's been, cultivated and processed by a Naki? Do you feel like there's, like, a difference there in that theobromine and the feeling that you get from the cacao itself?
100%, but just because a cacao is not ceremonial, it doesn't mean that it's not gonna pegar. It doesn't mean that, for example,
Like, it's not
there was a
gonna.
time when I didn't know I was using cacao that wasn't ceremonial, or like you go to an ecstatic dance, and
Mhm.
of course you're gonna get energy and dance, but my purpose with cacao is to help women heal profoundly, and that's what cacao does, is heal the heart and the womb. So I can't help a woman heal her past of abuse and trauma in the womb if the cacao, especially using the Mayan cosmovision, how I'm being taught, like, I can't help her heal if it comes from the hands of people who are miserable or being mistreated.
Okay. So specifically for the protocols that you're using and that you're practicing in, like, your specific type of, that's when a good ceremonial cacao really makes a difference. It's for that protocol and purpose.
Yes, but it also make a difference because it's also important who you support, because the Mayans also need help, they need support. So because cacao has become so popular and big, I mean, it's become a huge multi-million dollar, like, whole
Mm.
industry, and people just kind of buy it from anywhere, and that's the issue. It's like we have to educate people, keep like, buy this cacao that has, like, let's support this lineage of the original keepers of cacao, and my biggest thing with this interview is just, like, please do not call it ceremonial cacao if it's not, and also don't believe it that it's ceremonial cacao because it says it, because I know people who are selling cacao, and it says ceremonial cacao, and it's false.
Right,
You
so
know?
you're encouraging people to, like, do a little research, go a little deeper into it, ask questions, um,
Mhm.
'cause even I mean, if the ceremonial, and I know I lived in Austin, and there was this place where I would get ceremonial cacao, to have at home, um, but it's marked up in price. I mean, you're paying extra money to buy cacao with the ceremonial tag on it, you know?
It's
And so,
offered. That's the thing that
even
it's
for yourself, research for yourself, because like, why are you paying extra money if it's not true ceremonial cacao? Like, for that, just buy regular cacao and save yourself
right.
some money.
It's become a total branding thing because you know, people are missing the sacred, so they think just buying the cacao and drinking it is gonna heal them, and it doesn't really, or it's gonna give them, like, bliss, or they just think that they're buying, like, a super niche product, but not it's not always like that.
Right.
That's the issue, that the people who are selling the cacao, it's a business. A
Yeah,
lot
you're
of
paying
people
the
who's
premium for that.
Yeah, a lot of people who are selling cacao, unfortunately, it's a business for them. Like, there's some people who are in the Mayan lineage, and they really take it serious, but there's also other people who they don't s who they could care less about the Maya.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. Okay, and, like, so I understand working with Tata Carlos has been really transformative, and, and, like, part of your work is trying to educate people, and cacao lovers on the depth of the medicine and the importance of honoring the lineages that come with it, and so you found this deep calling and responsibility, um, although tedious, to make it known, worldwide what a real cacao ceremony is. So, and now you honor both lineages, so it's both the Aztec or Mexica, and then, the Mayan spirituality traditions with the cacao, right? Just for this section, what would you say is how are you integrating both the Aztec or Mexica and the Mayan styles of sharing cacao? Like, what does that look like in the actual ceremonies?
Well, we can't mix it. Like, that's why, for example, me right now being part of the Native American church, like, I can't become a Mayan priestess technically if I'm still partaking in the Native American church, right? 100%. But what I'm doing is that I switch it up. I don't mix it. Like, sometimes I'll call a lot of the work I do as that is a cacao ceremony. Right now, I call it cacao ceremony because it's what Aixa taught me, and it's from Mexico, and it's a cacao ceremony. It's all about gratitude. It's very traditional. A lot of people are really not ready for that work. People really think a cacao ceremony is like, oh, we got 2 hours because we're in the West. It's a very different mind. So it's been very difficult for me to do what Aixa taught me, basically. And you need to be able to have a fire straight on the ground. So you need to have the right circumstances to be able to do it exactly. But when I do my private tomas de cacao, I generally work with what Tata Carlos has taught me, which I do a lot of privates, and I'm also doing the ish cacao immersion, which I feel, because the way we really heal with cacao is drinking it for 21 days. And that's a program that the Akiks do. Some of them, they call it the Ish Cacao Challenge. And I mean, I got permission from the Tata to do it in this way, very similar to how he does it, honoring the Nawales. But I am not an Mayan Akik, so technically I can't be teaching about the Nawales. But there is a way that if you drink every day, you can heal with it. So what I decided to do is, like, when I do cacao ceremony, I'm doing what Aixa taught me, and I've just been taking in what I'm learning with the Mayan cosmovision. But some of the things that I incorporate is the ocote and the offerings, because it's like my way. But people, this is an interview, but people don't really see that. It's just my way of doing the work, of doing the offerings, and of starting to learn, because it's a path that takes years to learn. And yeah. So you can't technically mix them. One is from Aztec, one is Maya.
And the ceremony, because 'cause I've never been to one of your cacao ceremonies, and I would love to go someday, But do you at least talk about the trecena that we're in? I know, when I helped you create that flyer for your cacao ceremonies, for example, you themed it based on Akmak, which is the Nawal that landed on that
Exactly.
ceremony.
But well, so yes, I have done another extra instruction that the Tata told me is not to call them cacao ceremonies. This is another thing that Don Efren talks about, and it's very important. I've been adamant about this because if you're not doing cacao ceremony, it should be called a cacao circle. And slowly people are catching on, but we can't lie and say that we're doing cacao ceremony. But yes, so there's times that when there's a wall that I feel comfortable explaining, like Akmak is one of the ones that people understand. It was one of the first nawales that I started understanding, and when I started going deep into the healing of forgiveness and being sweet to myself. One of the first meetings I had with Tata, there was, Akmak, the bee was around and like almost landed on my shoulder, like
Mm.
on this side. And that's when he's like, "Oh, you got work to do, girl. Like you need to let it go. You need to forgive." And it's true. I had never done work with forgiveness. So the rule here right now is like, I only do that when I know what I'm talking about. And technically, I don't mention the trecenas because it's extremely complicated for the people, and we don't want to confuse them.
Mhm.
And people like you and I, we're bridges because we go in deep into the study. And I know you posted about how learning the Nawales and the calendar helps us do better work.
Mhm.
So, mm, by me studying it and practicing the spirituality, it helps me help them go into a more of a profound place. So yeah, sometimes I'll do it like if it's a nawal that I feel very called, and it's also I have to cycle sync around my cycle. So I don't necessarily pick the day. I just, like, based on the nawal, I just
You're going into your own personal calendar.
Yeah, I just pick the day that lands for me, and then if the nawal is something that I feel we can work with, then I'll do it. And if not, then I just keep it like gratitude, and and I just keep it like the Aixa
Right, so
style
it's
ceremony.
fluid. It's fluid. You kind
Yeah.
of express.
So sometimes, I mean, I don't want to confuse people, and the Tata does advise me to like not change things so much as far as calling cacao circles and cacao ceremony. But the thing is that I do both. And I actually, and the thing is that if anybody's going to be saying that they do cacao ceremony, I'm one of those people. Because and that's where there's been a lot of angst, and like it's been really difficult because people write cacao ceremony. Oh, I went to cacao ceremony. When people come to my cacao ceremonies, what everybody says, "I've never been into a cacao ceremony like this." I'm like, "That's because it's a cacao ceremony. You've never been to a cacao ceremony."
When I was living in California, I was volunteering for this group called I Am Life, and we had, cacao ceremonies. And I remember people would challenge the event host about this, and I didn't really know anything. I was just like, oh, okay, my friend, he knows how to prepare the cacao, and he's finding ceremonial cacao, and we're like including it with all these other things. But I had no idea the depth of this tradition, and like how important it is that we're actually connecting it with lineages and certain traditions, and the land where it's coming from, and the type of cacao it is, and how it was grown. Like I had no idea about any of that. And so and I think people right now are doing it, with good intention to connect, and to be in community, and to, use this sacrament instead of doing drugs, which is good. It's positive. It has its light side, and also there's a lot of ignorance around it, which is what you're trying to show, like, okay, there's more to this, and we're inviting you to learn a little bit more about what it means. So, um, I had a question for you about people that are wanting to offer cacao, but they don't have your kind of training. What would you recommend them? How would you recommend them to label it or to market it? Like, what would you say to those people? Because I mean, in essence, they're doing something positive, but how should they word it?
Okay, very simple. If it's a circle, you can call it cacao circle. or what a lot of people are starting to do now, it's depending on what you're going to share. Like my friend, she's a musician, and she did cacao, women's cacao and song circle. Don't skip false information. It's not a cacao ceremony, because a cacao ceremony is about gratitude, community. It's very specific, because that is the energy we work with, and that's what heals us, just focusing on that. It's about gratitude, community, offerings. Um so very simple. And then I also recommend, like, cacao is actually a medicine. So I mean, I'm not saying people are going to hurt people, but remember that it is a sacred medicine. Like, not everybody actually should drink cacao, right? Like, if people are super anxious, like, it's not a good idea, so that's why
It should be
it's important.
diagnosed, just like ayahuasca, like, there should be a proper diagnosis to, like, see who actually needs the medicine and who could do with something else.
Yeah, I like what you said. Like, maybe not diagnosis, but as far as what I'm learning, that's why my work is rooted in helping women heal their heart and womb, because cacao helps heal your heart and womb. That's tradition. That's how the Mayans help people heal. And for the men as well, the men need heart healing, but it helps heal our ancestry. So it helps awaken that ancestry to our grandmothers and our grandfathers. And if a woman, the best candidates for women, for the best candidates for cacao are women who have had womb trauma and have had abuse, or just as simple as heartbreak. You know, I mean, we can get into that.
Mm.
The Abuelo Efren talks about, they use cacao for very specific healings. I'm talking about, they have protocols for people who are suicidal, which that is something that I have dealt with. So this is why the spirit of cacao came to me. I have suffered with suicidal ideation because of PMDD. It's so scary. I didn't know anything about it. So that's why I have to work with cacao, because it helps with the depression. It helps with the fatigue of the PMDD. It helps give me clarity with the brain fog. It's the medicine that's given to women after they birth. Traditionally, the doulas and the midwives, that is that medicine that's going to give that iron and the blood. It's the heart blood back to the women. It's such amazing. It's a superfood for women. And then they do healings with all the parts of the cacao.
Wow. How does it, I mean, chemically, because I know for, like, when we say, like, it's heart opening, it's because of the serotonin and the dopamine release that it creates in the body, but how is it connected to the womb? That I wanna understand more.
Well, the heart and womb is connected, but I guess that's a great question. Um, I would say it's because of ish cacao. That now we go into, because it
Yes, I
ish
wanted to
cacao.
ask you, why is it called ish cacao? Okay.
Yeah, well, when we go into the creation story, which is in the Popol Vuh, which is which is the book for the Mayans. It's like the Bible. It's like their sacred book. Um, Ish Cacao is the goddess of love and fertility. So, because of that connection, and also the goddess of, abundance, but because of the connection with fertility, the cacao, I mean, it can represent different things. It can represent a pregnant woman. It represents like a breast, so it's a very, very feminine. And because we heal the womb through softening into our heart, and it's also the components that it has, it's a complete nourishment for our womb. It's the medicine, like I said, it's a medicine that's given. It's because of all the chemical components and the minerals and magnesium. It is what we need as women. It's like, it's the water we need. It's food. Cacao is food. It's a drink, but it's food. And then it's also because of it helps heal the emotions of the trauma in the womb. And so cacao becomes very psycho spiritual. Like, when we drink the beverage of cacao with reverence, we are drinking its water, and we are pure water. We come from water. So that water is what starts to soften us so we can go into our wounds with a clarity and with softness. So that's basically how. And there's also like some of the exercises that you do. Um, the thing is, to heal the womb, you also have to heal the heart. So they work together.
Yeah, I've heard for the women, there's like a link between the throat, the heart, and the womb. Like there's like a line there. And so like when one is out of balance, the other one was got a balance. So it's I'm assuming cacao is, is healing that line, that connection.
Yeah, and it's also the tradition. Like, it is used by doulas. Um, it is it represents the divinity of a woman. And so we need to have our womb clear, and it connects us to ancestry, because in order to heal the womb, we kind of had to go back a little bit to our mom and our grandparents, and kind of like start. That's why I also work with trauma, because trauma is all about epigenetics as well, because some of us are born already with these issues, and we're like, why? And it's because of our parents never healed. And so our mom, if women heal our womb, then we, like, for you, like, your perfect example, women who have not birthed yet, it's just amazing to dive into that womb work. You're preparing your womb to give birth to life, but you wanna make sure it's like a clear channel. And so I guess there's no, like, clear answer to that, but it's the magic and the power of cacao, and that is what is the cacao guardian. That's what it does. That's what cacao does. It heals the heart and the womb. So I am working with it like that, because I feel like that connection is missing, like, people are not getting it, like, and so it just goes so hand in hand with the work I'm doing, cycle syncing and connecting to your menstrual cycle, and understanding the feelings, and so cacao is associated with the moon, it's associated with fertility, it's associated with abundance, it's associated with femininity, and
Right.
like I said, yeah.
Yeah, no, I just think it's so fascinating because on metaphysical, like meta level, we're seeing how I understand Ish is that it's connected anatomically to our blood, the feminine reproductive system. And so when you say Ish cacao and you say Ish is fertility, like I'm just seeing all the bigger picture, the connection.
Right, exactly,
Okay. And you said
exactly.
that, so it's nourishment for, because 'cause I'm studying about, fertility diets and things like that. And so I'm assuming cacao is excellent, to nourish the uterine wall, as you're saying, to prepare, for a woman to get pregnant for conception, correct?
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Yes, and I'm sure that there's things that I don't know. I feel like Don Efren talks about that, because being a cacao garden is another level, so they know things to help women with that kind of things. And so, yeah, it's the goddess of fertility. Even if you wanna take the folklore out of it, right? Because I want people to just drink cacao. If they don't believe in the Mayan cosmovision, that's fine. I just want women to connect with the cacao, because I know a lot of people who are, my family is very, in a way, religious, and it's like, it's okay. Forget about the story. Just drink it and see how you feel,
Right.
because I don't want people to miss out on that.
Right, right, right. Yeah, that's really important. Mhm. Just bring it down back to earth.
Yeah,
Earth medicine.
right, right, right.
Yes. I
So
think we should probably start wrapping.
yeah, I just wanna make sure that we talk about what is cacao ceremony and what it's not.
Yes, yes, let's do that for sure. I mean, I think you already kind of touched upon it with at least first the cacao and what ceremonial cacao is. For those that are wanting to share and serve cacao, to call it a cacao circle.
Mhm.
And what a ceremony is now that's much more rooted in tradition, and there should be training behind that, and the facilitator should have an altar. That's how I understand it. Is there anything else?
Well, I wouldn't say the facilitator should have an altar, because what I wanna make sure that we have clear, and what I wanna give is the message, because I it was very difficult for me,
Mhm.
this process, is that there are people in Mexico who do have cacao altars, right? Because I received one. That's more Aztec. The Aztec took over the Mayans, right? So they're the ones who conquered the Mayans, right? As far as my understanding. And so, but the Mayans already had their ways of working with cacao. So here we go into the wars of tribes and lineages. It's like this altar and, oh, what you're doing is wrong, what you're doing is wrong. And what I want people to understand is that there are people in Mexico who have cacao altars. There are women who are popping up who are like, oh, I've been working with cacao for 20 years. Mexico, as you know, has a beautiful, very rich culture, but the Mayans do too. And the Mayan spirituality is most alive in Guatemala. And they are different. They are separate. So what I like to tell the Mayans is like, all right, they're doing it this way, and they're doing it that way, and the Mayans do it that way. So it's also learning, okay, this is more like Mexican Aztec, and this is Mayan. Very different. And then the altar, I guess it's more I mean, yeah, we all should have teachers, but the altar, I think it's Mexican. There's no cacao altar that exists for the Mayans. And that's very important to make clear. It's called a Toma de Cacao. We just sit, we do certain prayers, we learn certain protocols to help people, and I'm not Mayan at all, but the way that they do it is just a Toma de Cacao. And what I want to say, what the reason that Tata was like, oh, about the song and the music, every Tata would say that, um, is that what a cacao ceremony is not, it's not a concert, right? It's not a kirtan event. It's not a tantra workshop. That's not what a cacao ceremony is
Or
at all.
beverage for ecstatic dance.
Exacto. It's cacao ceremony is not ecstatic dance.
Mhm.
And you're starting to see people are starting to say ecstatic dance with cacao. That's fantastic. I get it. There was a time that I did go to events just because they were serving cacao because I was not feeling well, and I'm like, well, once I drink the cacao, I'll feel a little better. Um, s- so what I want to say is that, if people are talented musicians, with which there's a nice amount of very talented musicians, um, is just to start, it's like have some reverence and humility for first of all, for the people who have done the work and are doing the work to honor the lineages like me. It takes a lot of sacrifice. I've had to change a lot to be doing this work. You can't, I'm growing, I'm getting older. Um, but just because you're a talented musician doesn't mean that you have the right to call it a cacao ceremony. And that's exactly what's happening. And people love it. But if those people have more integrity, they can just say cacao concert. That's what it is. It's not a cacao ceremony. And great. When you drink cacao, everything sounds better and feels better anyway. Um, the thing about kirtan and cacao, I think that is really false because if you know anything about kirtan, which I've experienced, I used to be into it. It's not about drinking something and elevating, right? Because I feel like that's cheating. The whole point of kirtan is you chant for 3 hours and you don't
Right,
need anything.
medicine is the
The
chanting.
kirtan is the medicine.
Mhm.
Tantra is like that is the medicine. Now, of course, you want to practice. I highly recommend drink cacao and practice tantra with your partner. Beautiful. Hey, but it's not a cacao ceremony for sure.
Mhm.
And to end that, a cacao ceremony, the way I'm learning, especially the way Aixa has taught me, is that it's a ceremony of presence. And it's the biggest presence is the biggest gift we can all give each other. So I want to thank you for your time and for doing this. Um, but it's really needed. And cacao, if done the right way, teaches us presence. And I'm praying that people start getting a little bit more ready because if like the cacao ceremony that I learned, I can go do it in Mexico and people will know how to handle it because they're Mexican, because it's this culture. They'll be fine hanging around for hours, doing a certain ritual, talking here and there, and not being like, oh, what time is this going to end? Because a ceremony ends when all the things you have to do are over, when it's complete. The ceremony is complete when we finish el trabajo. So it's not about time. You know that the Mayan calendar is not about time. It's a different kind of time. So, and of course people are doing cacao concerts because if you're drinking cacao and you're experiencing entertainment, that's not exactly presence. I mean, of course, it's entertaining, but you're being entertained. You're not practicing presence. Now, is it nice? Is it beautiful? By all means, I'm not hating. Like, music, I love music. Um, but that's what the Tata was trying to explain to me. And I've gone a long way where I can do a ceremony with absolutely no singing. And another thing is that very important, the cacao ceremonies are done either somebody requests it because they want it, which I do often. It could be for a celebration. It could be for something more serious, like somebody's emotionally suffering, grief. That's some of the best ways to host a real cacao ceremony for a celebration, for a rite of passage, first moon, pregnancy, mother's blessing. Um, and But traditionally in the Maya calendar, they do the cacao ceremony. It's like 3 times a year. And like one of the main cacao ceremonies they do is in November. And it's like just thanking for the harvest. And if we think about why cacao is all about gratitude, is because imagine they're harvesting the cacao and then they're drinking it. And we're like, hello, thank you, Ahau. Thank you, Creator, for this beautiful cacao that you've given us, because it's ultimately great mystery. It's God that's giving us the gift of the cacao. Um, so so yeah, there is specific ceremonies that they do around the cacao tal, having to do with the harvest and the agriculture of kind of just giving thanks for having the cacao.
What is tal?
The cacao tal is what they call like the cacao farm.
Okay.
But the cacao tal, my
It's kind of like a
understand
milpa, like a cornfield, but for cacao. Tal.
yeah,
Okay.
and the cacao tal, my understanding is that's where like ceremonial cacao comes from. You get it? So it's like, oh, like Efren has a cacao tal, and like it's like they do get in charge of doing the cow harvesting in the prayers. So you don't call a cacao tal just any. My understanding, you don't just call it any
Any
cacao
farm. Cacao
farm.
farm. Right.
A cacao tal is because it's being prayed in reverence. So that's what it's called, a cacao tal.
Beautiful. Yeah, and you said that's 2 or 3 times a year, right? That.
Yeah, I believe he said 3 times.
Okay.
And he covers that in the YouTube, in that YouTube. I didn't wanna, like, quote everything because I just at least give people a link. I also wanna make sure people understand he's not my teacher, and I don't know him, but it's information that's online.
And he's an Aki.
Yes, that
Wow.
from Mexico.
Yeah.
He did the work,
Okay.
and he considers himself he's Maya, so he's not.
You spoke about the Ish Cacao challenge or immersion. You said it's 21 days. What is that in any way related to the choki, or is
Yes,
it just
very
centered on cacao?
very important question. I think I kind of was talking about it and then I didn't say anything. The way we heal with cacao, the way that I started to like heal profound things was through doing the Ish Cacao challenge with Nana Vivian and Tata Carlos. I did it several times, and that's how I started deepening into the Cholkik and the Mayan calendar. Through that is where I started. That's how you start to get to know the Nawales. And the 21-day Ish Cacao challenge is and can only be done by Mayan Akix. But because I'm under training, I did ask the Tata for permission if I can do the work very similar to what he did, to what I did with him. So my program is called the Ish Cacao Immersion. And I would say that it is definitely an introduction to the cosmovision. It's an intro because remember when you first start to learn about the Nawales, it takes time to understand this. So it's an intro because it's my way of honoring the lineage, the Mayans, and I also added all my other things that I bring to the table about moon wisdom and cycle syncing and even going deeper into the womb. So I essentially do the Ish Cacao immersion more for women and for women to learn how to connect and heal with cacao because the Mayans say that that's how you heal with cacao is drinking it for 21 days. And so I have never had my own online program or any program and there's no way that I can just for example create a cacao facilitation course. Like I can't see myself doing that and if I did, it would require the people to do the Ish Cacao immersion like 2 or 3 times because there's this big disconnection with Westerners. I've had a lot of women come up and they ask me, they say that they wanna do what I'm doing, and it's so sad because they're just so disconnected where it's like, first of all, some of these women haven't even attended any of my work, so it's like, I don't know you, like Aixa knew me for years and she was like, "Okay, you can handle this." Obviously, she saw
Mhm.
something. There's a lot of people that have asked me that I'm like, I'm not gonna tell them, but they're very far gone. They're not ready. They
Mhm.
shouldn't work. They what they need to do is drink the cacao so they can heal themselves and go deeper before trying to help others or trying to like have this
Right,
title
connect
or
with the
doing
actual cacao first and then see if, like, there's some kind of signal that this is part of their path.
Yeah, and I've done I had a woman that wanted to work with cacao, and I said, "Let's do the Ish Cacao 21 days. Anybody who wants to work with cacao and share cacao, you need to do this." So I did get permission from Tata. It's not exactly how he does it, but I put all his I make sure that people know that you can go to the source, you know. I don't want to be a gatekeeper, but what I also learned is that people actually want to learn from me. Like if they wanted to learn from the Tata, they would call him like we did, you know? Not everybody we are bridges. So and also there's a big disconnection between the knowledge of the Tatas and then what we go through in the West and our understanding of how the mind is, right? So yeah.
Yeah, and I think for that reason, it's important to periodically visit these lands because, I think it's unavoidable being brought up in the Western world that, you know, our way of interpreting life is still Western, you know? I mean, that brought that to my attention, and it is really important to remember that. Yeah. Um, I wanna go into a little bit about what your future visions are and your dreams and endeavors. Like, now I'm understanding that you're creating these ceremonies, but you also have it sounds like you have a vision to kind of, like, continue expanding this, right? So is there anything that you're working on now that you're wanting to bring forth?
Well, I kinda navigate between the online Ish Cacao immersion and then the cacao ceremonies, and I right now, I'm just focusing I'm gonna be launching another Ish Cacao immersion because it's also how energy works, like, there's people interested, so it's time to do it. I also kind of laugh at myself because there was a time I was trying to do cacao ceremonies every month, and I feel so foolish because that doesn't exist. I mean, like, just like the elders say, like, there is no such thing as, like, cacao ceremonies, and much less doing it every month. That is such a Western thing of me, and when I told the Tata I was gonna do that, he's very wise. He's like, "Okay." And it doesn't really work out because how often do people really wanna do a cacao ceremony? We don't need it that much. Now, drinking cacao at home and creating a practice where you can deepen, that's where the Ish Cacao comes in. And so my work, though, as far as my experience in helping people is going into using cacao to help heal trauma and basically doing cacao ceremonies a few times a year or the private work whenever people call. That happens a lot. A lot of times people want to do like cacao celebrations for their birthday, which I love doing. It's amazing. Or I do the rites of passage with cacao. And because I know about cacao, I feel like I'm doing it in a really proper manner. uh, for example, we had a young sister who got her first moon, like she's 12 years old. So we included cacao in the rite of passage. So I always include cacao in the circles I do with those kind of rituals. And I'm also I'm studying now more about healing trauma. So my work is about trauma, and I can use cacao and the body work, because the work I do is like, it's not always cacao. Sometimes it's body work, sometimes it's wound massage. I'm also diving deep into the wound massage and learning sobaras from the nanas, and like, and it's funny because I haven't been to Guatemala, and it's beautiful because I've been diving into the culture and learning, and I know I'll be there soon. And, just making my connections to learn so that I can use my body work and learn what the nanas know, and be able to kind of pass on that through my body work. So
Yeah.
trauma, cycle syncing, cacao.
Yeah, that's beautiful. I think you have like a good toolbox for really deep healing if you're integrating all of it together, including cacao and the Mayan spirituality. So I think your work is really special. Yeah, I just want to
Mm,
honor you there. I think you're doing really, really beautiful work.
thank you. You too.
Oh, and one last question as you were talking about the Ish Cacao challenge. So how does it work? Like, let's say if you're doing one of those challenges, it's 21 days, do you provide the cacao for them and you ship it out to them? If you because this is something that's
Yeah. So first, I don't want to say Ish Cacao Challenge, even though essentially that's what it is, but that's what my teachers, that's what the ACICs,
keys, right? So yours is
like,
immersed.
truly, if you want to do I also want to say an Ish Cacao Challenge, like, do it with a real ACIC. They do it. There's just a lot of politics, and it's just interesting because the way they guide, you do start understanding the Nawales, but I feel like I'm helping people go deeper. But yeah, I send the cacao. It's very important, and I get the cacao. I'm helping the money of the cacao goes to the Mayan akik, which goes to the elders in Guatemala anyway, and it's supporting those cacao tals, so I feel, and it's also about charging the way Efren says, like, I kind of leave it open because, of course, we have to get something for the work, but essentially it's like not something we can ever turn anybody down. And I want to honor the Tata and the Nana, because when I started working with them, I feel like I was in a place of like really struggling financially, and they didn't ask me for anything. And they really helped me, and I didn't really have to pay, and but they do have to pay to learn what they're learning. So I'm learning to balance it. I charge a certain amount, but whoever wants to join, I'm like, as long as the cacao is covered, it is what it is, because obviously they want to work with it. But yeah, I
Right.
send them the cachet cacao, which is from Peru. Ceremonial.
That's so beautiful. Um yeah, and I know these happen online and there's people from like all over the world that yeah, that they join these cacao challenges. I've been hearing about that too, which is really interesting, but I've never done one. I don't know how it worked. I don't know if I'll be able to join one if I live in Mexico. Would you be able to
Oh
support
yeah.
me?
Yeah, I mean, I would say join it with me. I actually was thinking of inviting you to be a person to just, because we're not Akiks, so just so you know, the Akiks, when they see us doing, when they see you doing the kind of work you do, like, there's talking around. There's a lot of like, you know,
Yeah.
because she's not an Akik, but I understand that we're bridges, and like, I refer to what you share a lot because it's just, you're making it easier. Your Substack is like, here's all the info all in one place. That's what we needed, and that's what they never had. It's been an oral tradition.
Mhm.
But I would say I'm gonna be launching a Ish Cacao program, and yes, you can absolutely do it. If it's hard to send the cacao, I'm sure you can find cacao from there, but I
Mhm.
could always mail you the cacao. And I think it will be so beautiful if you're doing any fertility work, and it's gonna
Mhm.
deepen your connection with those nawales,
Mhm.
and yeah, technically, I don't talk about the nawales when I'm talking about the Ish Cacao immersion, because people will say, "Oh, what is she doing?" But I always say, I got permission from Tata Carlos, and I put his name. And if there's anything I quote from him, I put his website and everything. So then I tell them, if you want to get your Mayan reading, you go to him.
Right. Right. The cross reading.
I do tell people, I give people their nawal. I think that, the Mayans don't like that if they see it, but I try to protect myself by saying I am working with a Mayan. I mean, if people want to serve cacao, they need to go to the source. They need to have, like, I cannot be a cacao teacher. I'm not a cacao guardian as of yet, but they can do the program so they can heal with cacao.
That's you just reminded me, I did wanna ask you about that because you said, um, within the Mayan traditions, like, an altar cannot be given or passed down through the Mayan yes, through the Aztec or Mexica, but not through the Mayan. But, what is it how is Tata Carlos a guardian? Like, what gives him that title and that authority? What training
He
did he go through?
Well, you have to know your Nahuales. You have to know the Mayan cosmovision. It's test. It's about learning, studying. You have to know a lot of the creation stories. It's
Mhm.
like becoming a priest. As a matter of fact, and the thing is that the cacao guardian, if I'm saying it correctly, is with the caciquel, and
Mhm.
then he's a priest with the quiche.
Okay.
I don't know if you caught that. So there's a little bit of different discrepancies, and he had to be like really learn. You really have to know the Nawales, but as your teacher's teaching you, what's important for you to know, because you know how we get information from everywhere to try to understand what it is, and like, we go with Mark, and because it's all there. But if you want to do that path, you need to listen to what the teacher's teaching you, so that when and if you're able to go to Guatemala, they're going to test you, and you need to have the answers, and it's not written, it's all oral. And they're going to ask you all these questions, and then besides the Mayan cosmovision, then there's like the work with the Tomas de Cacao, and there's certain work that you do, like drinking it, with corn, like drinking atole, drinking different. um so yeah, essentially, anybody, you should know, they need to be learning the Mayan cosmovision. That's what it's all about. He learned it, he did the work. You gotta pay them too. It's not a joke. You know that if you've seen the Mayan fire, it's a lot of offerings. A lot of people don't understand that.
Yeah.
And that's why from now on, if I ever need the Tata to do anything, I'm like, I will never ask him to do anything for free, because for a while they helped me. And it's because they understand that we don't know.
Mhm.
And sometimes when you need help, and like, or we're like, with all the experiences I've had, like, oh, how can we pay for healing? There's a lot of people that have an issue with paying, and like, but what the Mayans work with is offering. There's a lot of things you have to buy, and the
Yeah, there's a lot
cacaos.
of materials that go
There's
into
a lot of
the
materials.
fire ceremony. Yeah. Tata Carlos was, training as an Aki, many years in that, understanding the cosmovision, and then he went into I'm assuming there's um older, maybe elders that are working
Oh,
with cacao,
yes.
and so that's what gave him like that title of being a cacao guardian.
Yes, for sure. He always goes to Guatemala. I mean, he tells me little stories here and there. There's a lot of things he can't tell me,
Mhm.
but like, it is a hierarchy. Like, like the Tatas, they'll go to Guatemala and they'll do certain pilgrimages and visit certain altars that regular people don't go to, and they or they'll go drink cacao. They'll go do a toma de cacao with like a super elder, and like I've heard stories of, like, the Nana told me a story, like it's super healing. Like like she went through a huge experience drinking cacao, and they won't put sugar in it. Like it's also drinking the cacao like raw, and like doing certain work with the cacao. So so yeah, he really did that work.
Right, right, right.
That's why the thing is to become, and it takes years, and that's why they get so, because they did the work and some of us kinda didn't in that, but I think we also help them to soften, and it's like we need each other. The elders need the newer generation, because things change.
Mm,
And now, as far as Guatemala, they have come to the conclusion, finally, as far as I'm understanding, is like they're like, "Okay, everybody just do what you want with cacao," because it was a process for the Mayans. Another thing about the Mayan calendar, we didn't know anything before because they weren't telling us. They weren't open about their lineage. Because of everything that's happened with cacao, they have to be open with it because clearly the people want to learn and they're afraid, like the false information is also there, like the Jose Arigueles calendar. I mean,
Calendar, yeah.
I did a circle with women, and I know there's women there that have studied the calendar, and it's hard to change people's mind and to help them to understand. I really have to plug in my computer.
I think we should wrap it up there.
Yeah,
I think
yeah, let's
I
wrap
think
it up.
we went
I
we went
don't want
through
it to
all of
die.
the themes and topics thoroughly.
Yeah, it's red.
Thank you so much, Zuli. I really, really appreciate you taking your time to share so much of your knowledge with me and your study, and it's really an honor and such a beautiful thing to just have you as a friend and know that we're in this study together and in this tradition together. It's really beautiful.
It's an
Thank
honor, woman. Love you.
love
It's an
you.
honor for you to interview me, somebody that's, there, my fellow Noch sister
Mhm.
that has the knowledge and understanding of this lineage. It's very important to be interviewed from somebody from that perspective. So this is everything, and thank you for letting me get this information out in a good way.
Of course, this is so wonderful. I don't think there's much online about this other than Efren, of course, but
Right.
yeah, from your perspective, it's really interesting to hear about it. Your whole journey. So thank you so much.
You're welcome.
Hey, love.
Take care.
Take care.
Maltias, maltias, maltias.
Maltios, maltios, maltios.
Ciao, love.
Bye. Mm.